Hello, good people, and welcome to the Cancer Comedy Podcast with Dr. Brad Miller. This is the podcast where we look to help cancer impacted people to cope with hope and humor. And one of the things we really like to do is to talk to people who are doing just that in one form or another. And our guest today is Buddy Clay from buddyclay.com. He is the author of the new book called Built in the Fire, a little bit about his own cancer journey and about how he is navigating some adversities in his life and helps others people to do that. One of the ways he helps people to do that is he helps run an outpatient mental health counseling facility. And he's our guest here today on Cancer Comedy. Buddy, welcome to our conversation, my friend.
Dr. Brad, thank you for having me. I know we tried to touch base and we had some issues, but now we're here. So I'm
Hey,
glad to be here.
we're here. We're here. And you have quite a story to tell, and you have quite a service that you render to people who have a great need. And so let's just set the context a little bit about you are a cancer survivor in your own right. So take a couple minutes to give us context about when you found out about cancer in your own right and how a little bit to what you're up to these days.
Yeah, I will touch on it as briefly as I can. 4 years ago, I had a stage 3 melanoma diagnosis. I had a mole in the center of my back that was there my whole life, and I never thought anything of it. By God's grace, some of my best friends and I, after a guys' weekend together, they pressured me to get it checked out as soon as I got back home from our vacation. I did, and that's when I found out it was melanoma. So I had surgery. I did all of that. They removed it. They removed some lymph nodes, and I did immunotherapy for a full year prior to that. Everything was clear, no evidence of disease. 3.5 years later, I had one of my 6-month scans, and in that scan, something popped up in my abdomen, right in the subcutaneous layer, like a little belly fat. There was a small tumor. It turns out that was melanoma. So the melanoma, some way or another, spread in the course of those 3.5 years to a little tumor in my stomach, which made it stage 4 cancer now because it deviated from the original site. I had that taken care of. About a year and a half ago, I had surgery, and I chose this time not to do the traditional route, and I went about it a holistic route this time. So stage 4 cancer, stakes are high. It was scary, but I decided to just restructure my life, kind of change the way I was living as far as diet and lifestyle goes, and just trust in what God has provided for me here on earth and do my due diligence and treat my body the way I needed to. And
Yeah.
a year and a half later from surgery, I'm happy to say there's still no evidence of disease. So we are hoping to continue down that path, but it's been a lifestyle change for not just me, but I got 3 little girls right now and a wife at home, and we're all trying
Yeah.
to stay on course.
Well, yay, God, that you're on a good pathway now. But to take me back, you have, as you mentioned, 3 kids. I think when you had one of these diagnoses, you had a child on the way and so on. What went through your mind then? Was there a state of kind of, I don't know, confusion or, I sometimes call this the insane period. What kind of was going through your mind at that moment?
Yeah, so first time around, it was definitely something I was not expecting. Cancer wasn't a word that was even probably in my vocabulary. I had one little girl at the time living in California with my wife, and that's when the panic comes in and the fears come in and what's going to happen, which led, by God's grace, we ended up here in Knoxville, Tennessee, because that's where my family ended up. They are all living here for some odd reason. We're from New York and then lived in Florida, kind of all over, but
Right.
Tennessee's the where we landed. So we moved out here just to be close because we did not know what life would look like with cancer treatment, if my wife needed help watching the baby and all these different factors. So we moved here and we had one child at the time. And then fast forward 3.5 years, we had another little, not, she wasn't little at the time, but my other daughter was born. She was, I think
So,
she's going to be 5 now. So roughly 2.
so there was some real sense of uneasiness, fear, and lots of changes going on, and you're with your wife and your family, your kids, and you, and this led to some inner dialogue, I think, but also some outer dialogue. And I know in our prior conversation we had, you mentioned some of the dialogue around cancer wasn't very positive. What were some people saying that kind of was, looking to bring you down, or what was that all about? And kind of what clicked with you? You decided to tell a different story, and so take me through kind of what went on with that.
Yeah, that, I mean, you go on if you Google, that's not gonna tell you anything good. You search stage 4 cancer, whether it's melanoma or anything, you're not gonna hear anything good. That's all fear and scare tactics out there. And then even just people around my oncologist here in Tennessee that I met just because it was the only option, he and the surgeon, when I found out I had the stage 4 melanoma, they basically told me any ideas I had around diet were just kind of, a death sentence in lighter terms. I told them I might wanna go down to a clinic in Mexico, and I've heard good things about it, and they're like, "If you do that, you won't be around to see your girls in a few years."
Hmm.
And that's obviously not something you wanna hear, so those are
Sure.
the fearful thoughts in there. But the turning point was that I didn't have the firmest foundation at the time, but I knew enough, and one of the doctors said to me, I said, I'm thinking about shifting my diet. I really think it's important to kinda change what's going in because the body heals itself. If you're eating well and doing this and that, it could benefit you." And he at the time said, not too much. We're gonna do immunotherapy. That's gonna be the main driver." He's like, "If you're drinking a six-pack of beer a day, maybe cut back to 2." But he told me not to really change anything I was doing outside of the extremes, and to me, that was just like,
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know much, but I do know I shouldn't be going to McDonald's while I'm having a cancer diagnosis
Right.
and drinking, beers every night because that's the science is there for that. Whether you go down the route of full holistic or semi-traditional,
Right.
it just doesn't line up. So for that point, I was like, I'm gonna dive deeper into the research and see what I can do, and I was done with the program I was in at the time at UT Cancer.
Yeah. So give me just one or two specifics about that. You mentioned McDonald's and beer as two of the staples of your diet, I assume, at one time. Give me one example of what you did specifically to change things that was kind of dramatic there.
The specific it was a complete 180. I mean, I changed everything. I've always been an athlete. I wasn't completely unhealthy. There's plenty of fast food. I would say Taco Bell is a little better than McDonald's in my eyes, but I would eat fast food. I would drink beer. I didn't really care too much what I had because I would work out and stay in shape. But for me, it was quite literally the most extreme you can go as far as the journey went. It wasn't immediate, but in a very short period of time, my wife and I, put a whole house water system. We got rid of all plastic in the house. We only cook with stainless steel appliances. We were being intentional about only organic food. I went to basically a raw vegan diet is what I went down. It's a protocol by Gerson. I'm sure you've probably seen some stuff on Gerson in your lifetime. Max Gerson was a doctor who had his own type of idea behind inflammation and what you put in the body, and it boiled down to almost being a vegan who only barely cooks their food. So we got really extreme. I dove in, like I said, my girls were a big part of my life, and I was struck with so much fear of I wanna see them get married, and I'm
Yeah.
being told that stage 4 melanoma, I won't be able to see that. So I did everything. It wasn't just cutting out one thing, it was really a complete overhaul of my system and lifestyle.
So you didn't go halfway. You kind of went cold turkey, as it were,
No.
or all in. Maybe a
Mhm.
better way of putting it. So,
Yeah,
well,
for
that's
sure.
awesome, and it made a difference. And you're doing, from what you shared earlier, you're doing pretty well, right? At this point.
As far as the test show, and the biggest thing, which was such a amazing, thing that happened was I had the tumor removed. That was the only part of the surgery I did, and I was supposed to start immunotherapy. They wanted me to do 2 months of immunotherapy, have surgery, finish a year of immunotherapy. That sounded great for me. I'm a big fan of the immunotherapies that they have for melanoma specifically. The success rates are good. But at some point when I was supposed to start, I was in MD Anderson in Houston. I went to meet with the doctor. I went over a PET scan, and I was supposed to start my immunotherapy, and I just felt something and just I don't know, in my spirit, I felt that I'm gonna postpone this. I wanna do the diet, do everything, and then I'll have the surgery, and we'll see what it looks like. So the biopsy came back after the surgery. It showed that there was 1/4 of the tumor was dead, and if I would have done immunotherapy, the doctors would clearly say it was due to the medicine, and they would probably write off the diet. They might say that was it kept you healthy, whatever. But for me, I wanted that clarity that this diet was doing something important for me. So I got that, and it was something that's just invaluable because if I didn't, I would always second guess: was this diet worth it? Could I have been drinking? Could I,
Yeah.
whatever it may be. But
Yeah.
I didn't do that, and that was awesome.
Well, you've touched a couple of times there where you said something about your spiritual life and things like that. I know in our prior conversation, you mentioned that faith has sometimes been an anchor and sometimes a wrestling match as you've dealt with your diagnosis. Say a bit about that. How about faith as an anchor and wrestling match?
That's exactly it. I mean, I'll touch on the wrestling match first. I'll walk outside and, I'll see someone that using drugs, someone that might be homeless, they're eating, their lifestyle, and they're gonna probably live to 90. And there's been wrestling matches like, God, why me? Like, why am I the one that has to deal with this? Why can I go to a restaurant and see people who are clearly not taking care of their bodies, but they're gonna die of old age? And then I'm on the other side of it where I'm not promised to get past 40 or 50. And that was the wrestling match of God, why? A lot of back and forth and a lot of just thoughts on this shouldn't happen. I'm not a cancer patient, or what the normal person would perceive as a cancer patient. I go to those halls and I'll see people who obviously look very sick. Some people lost their hair, hooked up to IVs. That wasn't me, but it was me because I was in the same situation as them, and I couldn't make sense of it, and it was very tough to come to grasp with. But on the flip side of it, the anchor part was that, I mean, if I believe God is sovereign, He is sovereign. It doesn't matter if I have cancer or if I, lost my legs in a car accident. Like, He is sovereign no matter what. If my kids got taken away from me, God forbid, He is still sovereign, and I need to believe that, and that doesn't change based off my circumstances. So however long I'm here on this earth, my only goal and my only calling is to bring glory to Him, because this time on earth, in my eyes, is very, very momentary. It's short. So I need to make the most of it. So really, if I have an extra 20 years or 2 years, it's all the same in God's eyes. And I need to just do what I can in that moment, live day to day, be present with my girls and be present at work, and try to run a company the best I can.
Well, that's awesome. I love that give and take, or that kind of yin and yang
Mhm.
of the anchor and the wrestling match. And I think that's what a lot of people go through when they deal with cancer or any other adversity in life. And you can stated it very well how faith is in the center of that and the sovereignty. I love that part of
Mhm.
what you just shared there. You also mentioned now you have a business that's kind of came out of this experience a little bit, and in terms of trying to be helpful to other people. Tell me a little bit of how that came about and how you now run a business that's looking to help people who are going through their own struggles.
Yeah, so the book that I came out with is called Built in the Fire, and it's called Two Battles at Once is the subtitle. So it's talking about the battle of cancer and then the battle of running a business and running a home, basically. So I have an outpatient facility here. We treat substance use and mental health services. We have about 100 clients in our care at any given time. I have 50 employees, and we do great work all throughout the year. And it's a lot, though. It grew into something that was quite large. I opened it after I moved here to Knoxville, by God's grace again. I wasn't planning on it, but over the course of time, it's grown to something pretty awesome as far as what we can do. But it comes with a weight and a stress. I have to show up, and as the, quote unquote leader of the company, my employees look at me. I need to be as present as possible. If I start to stop showing up to the office because I'm stressed or my mood is down and I'm not leading by the right example, it's going to be felt on the leadership level, and that foundation will affect everything. So it's been a battle for sure, and just it's been a cool learning experience for me, because the biggest shift that I came from that was when someone has a title, or in my eyes, prior to doing this, when you look at what you see as a CEO, you wanna think like they have it all together all the time. They're running a business, their heads on straight, and everything is great for them. But that wasn't the case, and I always wanted to keep that image there to some extent. But through this last season, I would say in the last 2 years, I've really opened up about my fears. I've opened up about what's really happening. I've let my employees in on what's going on. I didn't keep it a secret. I said, I have this stage 4 cancer diagnosis. I'm gonna go away for a little bit to get treatment, and it's an ongoing battle and all these different things, and it's really opened the door to, I would say, almost humanized me more so than I could have ever imagined, and it's been so impactful because, as you're well aware, cancer doesn't only pick a very few amount of people in the world. It's kind of widespread. So
Sure,
I've been able to
sure.
talk to I've been able to talk to staff members who got a recent cancer diagnosis and explain where I'm at and level with them and give them the opportunity to kind of, talk
Well,
to me about some fears they have.
you kind of have the give and take there. You have kind of the
Mhm.
interesting position of running a mental health and substance treatment organization, and then you,
Mhm.
which is designed to support and help people in need, and yet here's some moments when you're the one who's in need, they needs support,
Yes.
and it seems like from what you're sharing with me, all in all, being vulnerable with your staff and maybe even some of your clientele was overall a
Mhm.
helpful thing for yourself. Was it also in some ways helpful for your staff and for, uh, the providing of a good service for your clients?
Yeah, I mean, I needed it for sure. It's very difficult to try to put on a face every single day that I have it all together. So being able to just be okay with explaining, like, maybe today I'm not gonna be, who I normally am. I might be kind of absent-minded or just not as present, and that's freeing to be able to have that conversation. And then with my clientele, it's been an awesome opportunity to have to sit down with people in my care where they wouldn't normally get that opportunity with, again, quote unquote, like a CEO or founder of a company. But I could sit down in my office just like you and I are talking and
Yeah,
talk about life and the fears. And I could tell them, like, you're here for mental health services because you struggle with depression or anxiety. I'm there with you. Like, the
right.
anxiety and depression, they don't discriminate against, who's got their lives together or not. It affects me just as much as you. And,
Sure.
I'm working through some stuff.
I think that's probably helpful. In fact, in our prior conversation, you mentioned a particular client who you have a was particularly impactful on yourself, and if you recall that story, can you share a little bit about that story, or maybe about any other client situation that's been impactful that's touched your life? What has it taught you?
Yeah, the one we touched on was, it was most recent, so it was fresh in mind, but he was really, really struggling. He was going through, I don't wanna say he felt like a victim, but it was affecting him in the sense of, like, there was an entitlement that he was feeling, and it was really affecting his mental health because you can't I've learned that I can't walk through life with a chip on my shoulders and be the best version of myself. I need to understand, like I mentioned, like, God is sovereign, he's sovereign. I'm not gonna have a pity party. And this guy was really struggling. He couldn't make a breakthrough. He was struggling in groups. He felt like he needed special treatment because of this. No one understood him because of the cancer piece. But he and I sat down and we had a really good, deep heart to heart conversation. And I explained to him that this is where I'm at. I'm not just some counselor talking to you and giving you some, good advice on how to improve. I've lived it and I've been through it. I'm not just trying to tell you what to do. Like, I'm telling you what I did. And that was so powerful. There was a shift. You could even physically see, kind of like internally a light bulb almost went off, and there was a piece that went on him where for the rest of his stay in our program, we're typically like a 45 to 70-day program. For the rest of his stay, he had a much different perspective and he was able to make a lot more progress in a short period of time because he removed that barrier or that chip on his shoulder that he had.
Hmm, that's awesome. That's awesome. Particularly when you see that transformation take place in other people, that becomes affirming to you that you're
Mhm.
doing something right and your organization doing something right. Well,
Yes.
you mentioned, buddy, that you have a book that just came out. So if you have on Amazon, we'll put links to that in our show notes at cancercomedy.com. But tell us, what's one kind of key thing that you really want people to get out of your book? What do you want them to walk away saying, okay, this is a nugget. This is something here that's going to serve me?
The biggest overall arching theme of the book is that you need to build a foundation. So the quote in there is that we don't ever really rise to the occasion, but we fall to the foundation that we've already built. So the
Okay.
biggest piece in this book is just it's more of a leadership guide that could apply to whether it's marriage, running a business, or training for a marathon, is that there's not a superhero moment. You don't wake up miraculously strong one day to overcome those challenges, and you're gonna fall to whatever foundation you built. And if your marriage during good times was built on a shaky foundation, it will crumble during those hard times. If your health is shaky when things are good, it will crumble during the hard times. And that applies through, any area of life. So the biggest takeaway from that book is that day to day work on that foundation. What's that look like? Is it being consistent every day? I like to use running as an example oftentimes when I work in this field, and it's like I can't go out and run a marathon tomorrow. I can't expect that to happen. I need to train and build a foundation. So if it's the first day of only running 1 mile, that's great. Or if it's even one step, you gotta start somewhere, but you need to keep building on it and building on it. Because when that day comes and it's race day, you're prepared best you can. You're not gonna just wake up and say, "Okay, I could run a marathon. I could get up and run." Like, that doesn't work, and that's the same principle for many areas. That was the takeaway, is just build that foundation so you don't have to try to rise to an occasion, but really just fall back on your foundation.
Build a foundation, and your metaphor you're using for the title of your book is built on the fire. So it sounds to
Mhm.
me like the foundation is also kind of I want you to go with that metaphor, but it sounds to me it's kind of built in the crucible of the fire. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, I don't think for me I would ever be able to get to where I'm at without being tested. I think about oftentimes different characters in the Bible too. I think about Job's life. Like he went through obviously the toughest times you could ever imagine. Everything was taken from him. And there's not much you could learn through good times. It's hard. Like if I'm running my business and everything's great, there's gonna be so many blind spots that I'm not aware of. You don't really learn to have a strong foundation until you're tested. There's plenty of cliches like pressure creates diamonds and all of that, but it's true. You don't really, if you make it through that fire, like I said, built in the fire, I could have crumbled and not, and just curl up in a ball and stayed in my house, but that wouldn't have built a firm foundation. I wouldn't have been built into who I am today and where I plan to be going in the future. So being
Yeah.
built in the fire is just, I think, the most important way to learn any of life's lessons. Just you can't get by just having an easy life.
And you could either be consumed by the fire or forged in the fire, and it sound like you've
Exactly.
chosen the latter. I think it's interesting. You got a great story to tell here, buddy. And one of the things you shared with me in our earlier conversation is having a story meaningless if you don't share it. And I thought that stuck with me. So when do you really realize that you got a story that really needs to be shared beyond your own experience to serve others? When did that kind of come to you, and what is meaningful to you about that?
There's been a lot of pressure from the outside, friends and family, so I can't say it was a complete internal shift of me wanting to share. Me by nature, I'm not someone who likes to talk or share. I'm fairly open. I'm okay with that. I've always been pretty good at talking to the ones closest to me, but me being on a stage or a podcast or whatever it may be has not been something that's been comfortable or easy for me. So I think when I was doing all this research and throughout this process, there weren't many great stories out there. It seemed like the ones who beat cancer beat it and they moved on and they didn't want to share their story too much. And there's a lot of not great stories out there, as I'm sure you're aware. Most people, there's a lot of horror stories and there's things that can be scary out there. And I wanted to be one of the voices of light. And that's why I was drawn to your using comedy aspect of it too. Because there is still joy in it. It's not a dark, dismal story that I have. It's a story of hope. And it's a piece that I want to share with people. And even if I don't get to live to 90 and for some reason something comes back and I go earlier, there's still a lot of joy that came through this. And there's been plenty of great interactions and meaningful conversations I've had throughout this journey that I wouldn't have had with others if I didn't have such a sense of urgency placed on me that I'm not guaranteed tomorrow.
Well, let's go with that for a second here, buddy. Is there a story that you have a particular joy or a particular, maybe even a funny or lighthearted moment that somehow happened to you, this whole process that's lifted you up, either among your own experience or at your business or with your family? Is there any stories that you might be able to share with our cancer comedy audience about how you experienced joy in this whole process?
Specifically, I don't know if there's been like a moment that has been I could pinpoint exactly. There's just been a lot of conversations, like I mentioned, that me being able to share my faith have just really has been powerful and talking to people about what I do and making light of it. Like for instance, one thing that is part of my protocol is it's I do coffee enemas twice a day. I've been doing them for about over a year and a half now. So that's
Okay.
one that's like people say, "Hey, what's a coffee enema?" And I say, I started drinking coffee from the other end, basically.
Wow.
So I've been doing
Okay.
that. And it's something very odd
Well,
that most people don't
I
do.
bet that gets people attention, doesn't it? When you say that, doesn't it?
It it certainly does, and it kinda opens the door, and I can make light of it too. It's something that
Sure.
I could laugh about and say, like, "This I know it seems funny, but I never would have expected,
Okay.
4 years ago, you asked me, not gonna happen."
Ok or have coffee from both ends. I love it. Yeah, wow. Well, I'm not sure if I would love it, but I'll just say that I'm glad you like it, or yeah, well, maybe you don't like it. But I'm glad you found some humor in that because that's certainly,
There is
uh,
humor.
oh my gosh, well, that is something else. But let's transition for a minute here in the last few minutes together, everybody, about how what you do and what you sharing can be helpful to others. Let's kind of take yourself back to when maybe you were diagnosed and first going through some of the changes you were going through, and or some of your clients are going through. I'm sure there's at least ideally, some big difference when a certain person is going through whatever intake process they have with you, and hopefully when they 40 to 75 days later, they come out. The idea is they had
Mhm.
made some progress. But let's talk about what would you say to someone who's kind of got the diagnosis of cancer or some other bad adversity in their life, and what would you say would might be what's here's the first maybe a couple of steps, couple of things to do, some action points that you can take based out of your experience. What something you might offer to someone who's going through that, who might need to hear that here today.
For me, I think one of the biggest things is to try and slow down. When you hear a diagnosis, everything tends to speed up and wheels start spinning and you feel like someone flipped over the timer and it's going and you can't stop it. So really taking the time to breathe for a moment, research what you can, and get second opinions. Not cancer isn't something to take lightly by any means. It's deadly and it's serious.
Sure.
But I don't like I had the ability to walk out of the University of Tennessee's cancer establishment because I took the time to breathe and use my discernment and reach out to other programs. I went to MD Anderson. There's other places I've talked to, and the time is running, and you do have to take action. You can't just sit there and stay still and not do anything. But I would say really taking it day by day is huge. We use that slogan a lot in, the recovery world for addiction. It's, one day at a time. I can't control 5 days from now. I can't control 5 minutes from now, really. I could control just this moment to some extent. So, really slowing down and just seeing what can I do today? I'm gonna research and do this today. I'm gonna reach out to this person today. Tomorrow's another day. I'll see how I'm feeling, and then I'll do what I can in that day as well. And that falls in line with the same principle of just building a strong foundation. Just one day at a time, breathe, and not get so overwhelmed with what's in the future because I can walk out these doors today and get hit by a bus, and that's
Yeah.
it. So I can't be focused on that.
One day at a time. I love that. Well, let's kind of wrap up our conversation with this thought here. You spent 5 years in just a roller coaster of lots of things going on in your life, cancer, business. You deal with a clientele who are having their own. By definition, if someone's coming into your mental health services or substance abuse services, their life's a mess in and of itself. Your life is a bit of
Yeah.
a in turmoil to say the least, and you've gone through the cancer process here, and you've chosen to serve others. What's something that cancer has taught you that you have taught you something about your clients or about something that this whole process that you couldn't have learned any other way, other than going through the cancer process or something maybe even made you better at your job? What's something that you've learned that cancer taught you?
It's about not that no one is immune to adversity or even mental health issues. A lot of people would think that they if you have a decent life, a decent job, and a wife, and whatever, the moderately average life, that you're immune to mental health issues. But it's just not true. We all go through seasons where there might be doubt, there might be anxiety, there might be depression. So for me, it would just really help me have more empathy for those struggling with what I didn't know existed prior to that. I didn't know what real anxiety felt like. Waking up in the middle of the night in a panic because I'm thinking about not being around for my girls when they get older, or being depressed and not able to work out because I just feel, I'm thinking about it so much. So just really understanding that mental health issues, and it's appropriate because May is mental health month, mental health
Yes.
awareness month, but it's just it's real. It doesn't discriminate against anyone. It doesn't matter if you have what looks like a great life or a bad life. There's going to be seasons where things get tough. And for me, it's been very helpful just to have more empathy and more compassion for those struggling. And when they mess up in my program or have a bad day and don't participate, there's been more grace for that. And I've been able to help my staff navigate that as well, and just to provide them with a platform of approaching people with more grace, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Well, you've been a great. It's been great to have a great conversation here with your buddy. I say, yay God for the health that you have now and the vitality you have now, and able to serve people, serve your wife and your children well, and your family life, and then also the clientele of your mental health services agency as well. And that's all a good thing. But I bet there may be some people who are listening to us here today who have been moved by your story. So if there's people out there who want to learn more about you or about your book, how can people get a hold of you or maybe even help people find out more about you?
Mhm. I try to make it as easy as possible. My name's pretty easy to spell. It's buddyclay.com. That has My company on there is linked on the page. You can find it's called New Hope Healthcare Institute. And then I have a shop on there that has the options for the book, some clothing. I have this hat on here, BITF, or Built in the Fire. So I have some just things out there to encourage people and more about what I'm doing. And then the second book is wrapping up soon, which goes really deep into the psychology and the protocols and all the stuff that I went through.
Awesome. Well, and we'll put connections to all that on our website, cancerandcomedy.com. His name is Buddy Clay. You can find him at buddyclay.com, the book Built in the Fire. And he's been our guest today here on the Cancer and Comedy